Hey, Ben from Dude Quest here, and this video I am making about how I went broke chasing money. Of course, ironically, right? And really, this is kind of my story of impatience and also pride. If you I talked about this a little bit in my home buying video, of course, too. But if you are in your 20s or are just feeling frustrated with where you're at right now, particularly financially, I think this video is more of a financial lesson that I have learned the extremely hard way. Then I hope it's encouraging for you. If you've gone through something similar, then, maybe you can commiserate. And if you are someone who has been wise enough to have patience and not be as reckless as I was, then leave some advice down in the comments, because it helps. It's really encouraging to hear stories of people who didn't rush and who didn't think that they were all that and just humbled themselves and learned and got the result anyway. But my story is not that story, and my story is very much that not like I'll just tell my story. Why don't we do that? So I'm gonna take you back 8 years ago, to be when I was 20 years old, and I was a sophomore in college, and I was just feeling increasingly frustrated with where I was. And I'll paint it to you this way. I think I had the experience of feeling like everything I was doing was fake. Like the things I was learning in my college classes didn't feel like they were real or applicable to life or what I wanted to do. I had the sense that that all the extracurriculars I was involved in were pointless. I was involved with career fair and a bunch of business clubs and stuff, and I just felt like I wasn't actually doing anything. I could say that I was participating in these things and on my resume, my college resume, to get internships and stuff, but I didn't feel like I was really learning a lot by being a part of these things. And then I just felt like I had more potential than I was able to use in my internship that I had at the time. And some of these things were true, but a lot of them were less true than I thought. And it just put me in a really, I would say, susceptible emotional state, especially at that time in my life, right? Because I was maybe a little bit like drunk on the idea that I was supposed to succeed. And I think it's actually a really common assumption. And I don't know if this applies to, the girls and women out there as much in terms of making the same assumption. But I know that a lot of guys in particular just assume that they're going to be mega wealthy or millionaires or whatever your conceptualization of wealthy is, which is usually just whatever amount you think will allow you not to have to worry about money anymore. A huge amount of young people think that, like more than it's like a healthy majority of people think that when they're like between 18 and like their early 20s. And that percentage goes down with time, because I think the more time passes, the more you don't get that result, the more that hope fades. But point being, I think it's a really common assumption to think that you are going to be rich and successful. And I was really, really drunk with that idea. And I'm calling it drunk with that idea because it just totally like dictated the way that I engage with things. If I wasn't moving forward at a really rapid pace, then I felt like I had outgrown the things that I was participating in, and that I needed to kind of cut those things off and move on and do something new. So, anyway, I felt that way about my classes and my clubs and what I was spending my time on, like on the weekends and stuff. And, me at that time, I was just having the traditional, I had a pretty exceptional college experience, but in a lot of ways, it's really characteristic of exactly the stereotype that you expect, right? Like I was doing all the extracurriculars. I was in business school. I had an internship. I was in a fraternity. I was going out a ton. Like right is like very very like drinking culture. Um, and it like fraternity life. There were constructive parts to it for sure, but it was very much so the uh like just party on the weekends and that kind of thing. And I just felt really frustrated because I was compelled by the idea that there was a lot more out there for me, and that the things I was currently doing wasn't moving me closer to any of the things that I actually wanted. So um, there's a way in which that's true and a way in which that's not true. So I ended up, I forget exactly what pushed me down this path, but I got hit with an ad from a guy that, if anyone's familiar with him, Ty Lopez was promoting at the time, named Sam Ovens. And I really like Sam. I really like his stuff. I think he's a really sharp business guy. But his ad just hit me right in the heart back then, because he was teaching you how to run like an online consulting business and work remote, live the life of your dreams, all the typical things, right? It's like financial freedom, independence, impact, all whatever things you associate with having all the money that you want. And I just bit on that really really aggressively, because it spoke to kind of my deepest desire at that point in time. And so I bought that course, and the way I bought it actually was by taking out a couple thousand extra dollars of student loans. And when the loan money hit my bank account, it was like a couple $1,000s. I spent all my money on that course, and it drained my bank account to the point where I had like 30 or $50 left, like not a lot. And I kind of like jumped in, head first, and I learned a lot of things, right? It was really, really exciting, and it gave me a lot of frameworks and helped me understand business, and I liked what I was learning and studying from it. But this kind of like reckless leap became characteristic of a lot of the other things that I did. So kind of in my desire to succeed and make money, I left my fraternity. I lost contact with a lot of my friends that I made in college. I dropped out of school. I lost my college girlfriend. I had $0 in my bank account. Like all these things, right? And I thought I knew it all because I had taken one online course, and I had no appreciation for how much more there was for me still to learn. So anyway, I was really charged up, and I started going down this path, and I met a mentor who was willing to take me on and give me really direct exposure to some like much higher level business things than I was used to in my kind of like entry level internship. And I was just really excited by that. But I also quickly learned how out of my depth I was when I did that. And obviously I had to leave my internship that I had. So I left. Basically, there's a clean break in my life before I bought the course and after I bought the course. Because before I bought the course, I was like planting a lot of seeds, participating in college, making really good friends. I had an internship that could turn into a full-time job if I'd stuck it out. But I was frustrated and impatient. I like totally left all of those things behind. Bought this course and met a mentor who was willing to kind of take me on and give me a shot, even though it was really premature. And I'm really grateful. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful that I got a shot to, participate in higher level business things. But there's also something to be said for learning things when you're ready to learn them. Jumping into the deep end like that, it was very, very overwhelming. I immediately found myself working, 80, 90-hour weeks. I think one week I actually clocked 96 hours at my laptop working, which is a lot. That's like, I know that people in the finance world will go through that kind of thing when they first get their job, but it's a lot. It's really brutal, and I do not recommend it. And the truth of the matter is that I was still only making, working for my new mentor, like $12 an hour, $15 an hour, something like that. it was no more than I could have made at any other entry level thing, right? At my internship before that, I was making like $13 an hour. So it's like $100 difference or something, you know, every couple weeks. It's not a lot. Um, so anyway, I took that leap, and it just started this pattern for me because even with the opportunities that my mentor was giving me, I was working so hard and was so overwhelmed by the opportunity that he exposed me to. Um, and I had no appreciation for how junior I still was. And so I got freaked out and overwhelmed and frustrated. And it did not take me that long before I, basically told him, like, I need a break. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And so I basically cut and run again because instead of understanding that I needed to just have a frank conversation with him about how much, this was draining me and what I was ready for and not ready for, I decided that he didn't know what he was doing and that I needed to move on to something better. And this just became the pattern of my interaction with like everything work and job related, right? Like everywhere that I went, and sometimes, I was somewhat justified in my opinion, but it was way too extreme in a lot of cases where I would show up somewhere and I would do a lot of work, take on a lot of responsibility, get overwhelmed and frustrated, blame it on the owner, and then move on. And it has resulted in me burning a lot of bridges. It has resulted in me being extremely susceptible to business opportunity, biz op, marketing. I've bought a lot of courses and spent a lot of money on, make money online, financial freedom things. And ultimately, where I've ended up now is like a version of all the things that I wanted once upon a time. But I am completely confident that I could be where I am today with a lot less frustration and heartache, right? Because, I just like that first course that I bought that was a couple $1,000s, and I used student loans and like overextended myself. I did the same thing many times with opening registering an LLC, going to the bank, getting a credit card with a way too big of a limit than I was ready to handle, and then getting carried away with what I thought was possible. And basically that's kind of the story of a lot of my professional life and development, is me believing that I was ready for things that I was not ready for, or at least wanting to dive in too aggressively for the knowledge and skill set that I had at the time. So I open an LLC, get a credit card, put a lot of money down on like a course or a business opportunity or a coach or whatever it was, follow their steps, buy software, buy ads, hire contractors and stuff, and then kind of fall flat on my face because I did not know what I didn't know. And there's no single teacher, at least not in my life, who's taught me every single thing I need to learn. And also there's no teacher ever who can teach you every single thing you need to learn immediately. And I because of that and my lack of understanding of that, I just fell flat on my face over and over again, and a lot of this is me putting it in terms of doing my own stuff, but I've even bought courses for companies that I've been an employee of. And again, the situation is me thinking that I could solve my problem by overextending, taking on too much responsibility, and just thinking that I knew better. And something I wish that I would have done differently in my approach to these things is whenever I felt impatient or stuck, my instinct was always to spend a lot of money, cut and run, dive into something else way too aggressively, right? And it's like, in a lot of ways, that's just me running away from solving problems. In a lot of ways, that is kind of like a really prideful and impatient response, right? Because there were a lot of lessons I would have learned if I had just stuck out and finished my degree. If I had just stuck it out and learned one thing at a time at my internship, if I had just stuck it out, and instead of spending tons and tons of money on courses and books and all this, well, really online courses and coaches, if I just read books or gone to the library or talked to my professors who had run successful businesses, right? Like there were so many resources available to me that would not have come at the personal and financial cost that I pursued. And I mean, honest to God, it is just a complete stroke of luck and grit, but really a lot of luck that I've come out on top, right? Like there's almost no reasonable explanation why I never filed bankruptcy, you know? Straight up. I've really had to claw myself back from a lot of pits, and it's a horrible, frustrating thing to do. And so I guess this message is more to, if you are that kid, or not even a kid, right? Like if you're feeling like I used to feel, where you feel like there's more out there for you and the world is just not giving it to you, and what you need to do is go super, super aggressive and dive headfirst into some new opportunity, like take a deep breath, because wherever you're feeling resistance right now, like there are lessons to be learned in that, and those are really worthwhile, and they're probably the things that you need to learn to move on to the next thing. And moving on to the next thing could be resolving that problem at your current job, or, you know, whatever it is. And then making things better there. You know, the instinct to cut and run and believe that you're going to make it all happen to yourself. You know, you're going to achieve like the life of your dreams and have like thousands and millions of dollars in the next like 90 days or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's a really sketchy path to go down, you know. Like straight up, I have tried, man, there was a while there where it felt like I was doing something new or trying something new like every 3 to 6 months. And that's just not the kind of endurance that you need to see something through. Like I could have stayed in my internship in college for years. I could still be employed there right now today if I had stayed and made it a full-time opportunity. And I could have still very, very easily learned the skills that I've come to acquire. And I could have turned that into a lot of, you know, like I could have created the opportunity that I was looking for in all these other places right where I was originally. And I think that's the thing that is kind of a rough realization in retrospect, is that all the opportunity I was looking for by running around like a chicken with my head cut off, by spending tons of money, and just like overextending myself way, way, way too aggressively. You know, all those things were possible without any of that. And so, I just hope that your frustration doesn't turn into a reckless decision. Because it's way harder to come back from being overextended and having tons of credit than it is to make the most of something that you currently have, right? And I think the other thing too is that, you know, my original desire was something like to be completely independent, so I never had to worry about anything, right? Like I wanted enough money that like I could just have passive income and go sit on a beach somewhere, like whatever, like that whole dream, right? And I don't even want that anymore. I mean, I'm actively taking steps in my life to be more local and to take on more responsibility and to have a little bit less flexibility, you know, every month that goes by. And by taking on more responsibility and giving up some of those dreams, I've actually found a lot more fulfillment and meaning in my life. And I feel way more grounded than I used to, because really all that attitude before was a lot of insecurity about, like not having enough, or like not feeling protected from the outside world or whatever. And it's like, we all got to learn at some point that like nothing's ever going to be perfect. No amount of money is going to completely protect you from all the things that you might be worried about. And that's not to say that like it's not okay to want enough to feel like you have savings for a bad event or whatever. I mean, like take what I'm saying in context, right? There's just an extreme level of it where I overestimate my capabilities basically out of insecurity and fear and frustration and pride, rather than trusting the process and seeing it through and dealing with the frustrations that came at every step of the process. There are a lot of things that I have had to check myself on more recently, and basically I wasn't willing to plant seeds and wait for them to grow. Right, I wanted to plant a seed and see the result immediately. And that's just a really, really reckless, dangerous thing to do, especially in your early 20s. I mean, you do not want to be financially burdened by that kind of stuff. So I think my encouragement is that there's always a next step, but it never has to be an all or nothing decision, right? Like, you can always make more of your current environment, or with minimal change, right? I'm struggling, I think, to get much more specific than that without being really prescriptive, which I don't want to be. So I guess my framework in retrospect would be: am I making this decision? Am I putting everything at stake when I don't have to? Because the other thing I did is, every time I messed up, I would go deeper, because to recover from each mistake, I had to go bigger and bigger and bigger to make it right and kind of get everything back under control, or at least that's how I felt. So anyway, it's not a healthy approach, and it took me a long time to realize that in myself. And really, for me, it took myself completely falling flat on my face and completely overextending myself and running out of money over and over and over and over again. And I've always just barely brought it back from the brink of bankruptcy. And I just don't want that to happen to anybody else. And the last bit that I think is really the most important thing is, I've realized that all the things that I dreamt about when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, or whatever, like, I would make these PDF documents of, like, visualizing my dream life and all that kind of stuff. And it was like beaches and boats and planes and, we're traveling the world and doing whatever the heck I wanted. It's like, man, it's really silly. Like, that stuff, it just doesn't matter to me like it used to. Like, I actually am happy and content and fulfilled with much less, like orders of magnitude less than what I wanted originally, and man, like, I was really in a prison of my desires, and a lot of my desires as a kid were really just covers for insecurity about not being enough, or not having enough, or like somehow feeling that my life wouldn't have any meaning unless I could achieve these things. And that's just not true. It's not true. There's tons of fulfillment and good things and meaning to be found in life just from being present with the people in your world, and taking one consistent step at a time, and trusting the process, and letting it play out. And it's not like you're surrendering to never achieving the things that you want, but it's like, how much do you really need for real? What actually matters to you? And I thought I knew what mattered to me, and I had a very skewed perspective of it. And life sucker punched me in the gut a lot, because I left myself open to it. And I've realized that pretty much none of the things I originally wanted were what really mattered to me. So anyway, that's I think that's where I'm going to leave it for this one. So just like always, don't make the mistakes that I made. Have patience. Try to make the most of the situations you find yourself in, and don't put everything at risk to have your dreams sooner than it makes sense to have them, I think is maybe my encouragement. So I'll leave it there. Thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one.